Real-time crime centers have become a cornerstone of modern policing, helping agencies connect information faster, improve coordination, and make smarter decisions when seconds matter most. But building or refreshing a center can be complex. Constant Technologies helps simplify the process. Constant has partnered with law enforcement agencies across the country to plan, design, and build real-time crime centers, communication centers, drone operation rooms, and emergency operations centers, spaces that are purpose-built to support today's public safety missions. From American-built operator consoles to advanced video wall systems, we focus on the physical environment and technology infrastructure that brings your data and teams together. Our experienced design team works closely with your agency to create layouts and plans that support current operations and future growth. The result is a command environment where video communications and collaboration come together, helping your team move from reactive to proactive policing. Learn more at constanttech.com and schedule a complimentary design consultation. To get started, contact my friend, Lieutenant Sean Arthur, retired from the Collier County Sheriff's Office, at 239-469-4901. Every day you put your life on the line to protect and serve. Who's protecting you? United Badges Insurance Services operates as a dedicated resource for the first responder public safety community. Serving thousands of first responders, United Badges offers a wide range of products including commercial insurance, group accident and health insurance, and personal insurance such as auto, home, renters, rental properties, vacation properties, boat, motorcycle, RVs, flood, and umbrella. United Badges serves active and retired public safety personnel, public safety agencies, public safety associations, public safety support businesses, and public safety families and friends. Experience the United Badges difference. Call 800-566-5990 or visit unitedbadges.com to request your free insurance quote today. United Badges Insurance Services is a proud strategic partner of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. Applicants are individually underwritten by each respective insurance carrier and subject to insurance policy terms and conditions. Not available in all states. Promotional material for descriptive purposes only. Welcome to The Tactical Pause, the official podcast of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. I'm John Creamer, Deputy Executive Director of FDSA. Each episode, I sit down with law enforcement thought leaders to tackle critical issues shaping the future of public safety. Together, we'll explore key topics that empower law enforcement professionals to navigate challenges, lead with confidence, and advance their careers. Take a pause, gain valuable insights, and lead your career with purpose. Thanks for listening. Hey, on this edition of A Tactical Pause, I'm joined by my old friend and former colleague, Michael Laidler. And Mike and I are going to kind of bounce around. We're going to talk a lot about leadership. We're going to talk a lot about personal accountability and how we move forward, not just in law enforcement, but at home and other ventures in our life. So the first thing out of the gate is we got to play the game of where in the world is Michael Laidler? So where are you at right now?
It's funny you say it like that because I've been seeing some social media memes lately. And it's like, rather than saying, how are you doing? People are saying to me now, where are you at?
Yeah.
Because I do love traveling. And it's, John, over the last few years, for me, people say, what are your hobbies? And that's one of my hobbies now. It's one of the things I do to completely get away. And what people don't know is like, especially if you have a job where you have where you're tied to your phone, or even a government job where you can't take your phone out of country. When you go out of country, you really can't do any work besides maybe scroll social media or check the weather. So for me, it's been my disconnect that's been very, very good. So right now I'm at my main house, which is in Beaumont, Texas. And for those that don't have a clue where Beaumont's at, it's not Beaumont, California. But if you look at Houston, and you can find Houston on the map pretty easily, you look about 80 to 90 miles east of that before you get to Louisiana, and you'll see Beaumont right off the I-10 corridor.
I've driven through.
Yes.
I did not slow down, but I drove through.
People always say, why do you still have a house there? Well, first, my son still lives in Louisiana, and I get him every other weekend. And then during like holiday breaks and summer, I get him a lot more. And it's just a closer drive. But like during the week, I spend a lot of it in Houston.
I got you. So before you answer the rest of why I would ask you, where are you? Let's tell the listeners who you are and how you got where you are and how we cross paths.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, born and raised in Miami. And when I graduated high school, I ended up going to Florida State University in Tallahassee, Florida. Most of the viewers, or probably a bulk of your viewers, know where Tallahassee's at.
Oh, yeah.
So they shouldn't be like, do I got to look for Tallahassee on I-10? If you don't know, if you haven't been there, just go check it out. It's amazing. So at that point, I started studying criminal justice. And at the age of 19, which some people know, especially ones that are still at Tallahassee Police Department, TPD, I had the opportunity to apply to be a police officer back in 2004. And luckily, by some miracle of God, someone said, hey, we're going to take a risk on this 19-year-old. So in January of 2005, I actually joined I became a police officer. And I loved that journey. And throughout that time, I always wanted a little bit more, not because I wouldn't appreciate what TPD offered, but as people know, I guess I was just kind of like a person that needed to travel more. So I was like, you know what? I want to do a little bit more traveling domestically, but I also want to just try different things. So in 2009, I actually went to Border Patrol in Laredo, Texas, and that was amazing. However, when I was married, my son ended up being born in 2013, and we're like, you know what? Being from Florida, we have no family, and the friends we have is just different.
Yeah.
And we're like, you know what? We need to go from Texas back to Florida. And I had a friend at the time. He actually worked for the federal prisons prior to working in Laredo. And he was like, hey, man, there's prisons in Florida. There's a few that you could check out. And he was right. There are probably about 5 or 6 prisons, federal prisons, which a lot of people don't know, in the state of Florida, one being in Tallahassee.
That's right.
And yeah, right there, there's an FCI off of Capitol Circle. And I applied, and fortunately, I already had federal time working with Border Patrol. And within, 3, maybe 4 months of applying, I was now a correctional officer in Florida. And since that time, it's been amazing. I never knew working for the prison system would be as good as it is. And it's because what a lot of people don't realize is you can maintain your law enforcement status and work all types of positions. You could be an officer, you could be a case manager, which some people look at like a parole officer kind of thing. You could be any supervisory level from a lieutenant up to a warden. You can work in human resources. You could work in a business office, which is like a budget analyst. And it was just a variety of things. So when I got there, I was like, you know what? It's going to take a lot for me to leave the prison system at this point. And I was actually tested. A lot of people don't know this because I usually don't think about it when I'm introducing myself. In 2015, as soon as I was picked up for a promotion in Louisiana, the DEA called. So I had to kind of make a decision. I was like, do I stay with the prison system or do I go DEA? And at the time, we had just moved to Louisiana, 2 weeks there. And my wife, she was like, yeah, I'm not ready for another move. And with DEA at that time, 2015, a lot of their positions were on the border. So it would have defeated the whole purpose from leaving Border Patrol to now going DEA. And usually the first 5 years, once you graduate, you're at some border, at least back then. Yeah. I know it's changed a little bit, but there was a very high chance I would be back on the border, and that would have defeated the whole move for the family. So at the time, I was like, you know what? It's not the right decision. So I continued to stay in the prison system, promoted multiple times after that. And during one of those promotions early on, when I entered a leadership role, I was like, you know what? I want to be a better communicator. And John and I, you both know when leaders can't communicate, and for lack of better words, they suck. Yeah. It's just what it is. You can't be in a leadership role and not be able to convey your message or deliver your vision or just give basic instructions. And while I don't know if I was bad at that, I just know I wanted to be better at it.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
So you're spot on that, Michael. So I know somebody that is a police chief here in Florida, and is their agency has gone through a lot of upheaval, organizational change. And at one point, the chief and I spoke about what are some of the issues facing the organization. And I went back to something I'd heard a long time ago. In fact, it's even in the Old Testament that people without a vision will surely perish, right? And to your point that we have to have a vision, we got to know where we're going. So when I asked this chief, I said, what are the 5 most things important to you? They couldn't answer it. And I said, what do you think your command staff says? If somebody says, what's the chief's vision? Your command staff doesn't know either. And so what are you conveying to the troops? There's no vision. You're just here to arrest people, take them to jail. But we have to have a vision. And to your point, I mean, there are people that are in senior leadership positions that don't even grasp that concept. And had this person had a vision, then the agency would be, moldable, malleable, and start going in a direction. So that's a great point, that to be a better communicator and outline a vision. And it's just kind of sobering, too, to have, an acquaintance that is a police chief that can't even tell you the most important things to him or her. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah,
or thoughts on that.
And what? Yeah. Oh, so what's the bad part about that is they do have a vision. I'm pretty sure of that, because you can't get to the highest level without having some kind of like long-term vision of some sort. Like you have to be thinking. But what I would probably say is he probably doesn't know how to communicate it effectively.
Okay. Or she, yes.
Or she, yeah. Or she, yeah. He or she, yeah.
I'm trying to keep anonymity. So, but
well,
yeah,
so well, I mean, yeah.
Well, no, talk
I'm
about
sure
it.
there's a lot of police chiefs, yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about you're right, the communication part of it. Keep going with that thought.
Yeah. So, and like I do a lot of speaking on leadership now, and I speak to a lot of executives, and most people that have an idea of what I do over the last 3 to 4 years at my business I've had for 8 years. I've done a lot of sheriff's associations. I've done a lot of chiefs associations, prison warden associations, and what that has taught me, and a lot, it's very nice to see, is that they want more communication skills. They don't always admit it out loud, but some of the things I say, like at first, John, like when I first started really speaking to higher levels of leadership, I was always kind of, have that kind of like imposter syndrome almost, because I was like, I've never been a chief, I've never been a sheriff. But that first year, when I dove really deep, and this was like in 2022, to like law enforcement executives, they loved it. Because they were like, hey, we just want someone to talk to us, not down to us. Like we don't know what we're saying. So you have someone like me, where I was studying leadership. I was at different levels of leadership. I was at the table in leadership meetings. I just never had the official title. But based on my experiences and my education, I was like, you know what? There's things that we have to work on as leaders: delegation, vision, just dealing with conflict, a lot of things that people run from. But if they learn how to communicate that effectively, it's actually quite easy. Now, the caveat, because some people are probably listening or watching thinking like, well, even if I'm a good communicator, doesn't mean my team listen. And you're probably right. Some people just aren't good at what they do. Some people aren't good followers. But if you have the right tools, that's what takes you to that next level. And you never want to be the person that they're looking at saying, oh, he or she didn't provide me with this particular strategy, or they didn't provide me with this tactic to succeed. So for me, back in 2015, when I was in a leadership role, getting into it, I wanted to take whatever team I was over to that next level through my communication. Because, John, once you get in that leadership role, you shouldn't be hands-on all the time. You
Right.
can't be the first person saying, oh, I want to take that burglary report, or I'm going to be the first person through the door. You have to step back and deliver your message. Like, hey, I need you all to do X, Y, and Z. And then when you get to that executive role, you definitely shouldn't be on those scenes unless you're like in a 5-man department. That's another story. But like agency size, like TPD, which is like 350 sworn or something like that, that leader needs to be ready for the press conference. That leader needs to be able to walk to the team during the closed door meetings and deliver that vision. So for me, I had that big picture on my mind. And during that time, 2015, I joined something called Toastmasters. Not a lot of people appreciate the simplicity of that program.
Yeah.
But it's an international educational, literally, organization designed to make you communicate better and lead better. I knew I had to get better at communicating. That's in a long short. So I joined Toastmasters. I did that for a few years. And then during that time, one of my buddies, who's still a Border Patrol agent, he had joined something called the John Maxwell team. Yeah. And I saw this on his social media. I was like, this looks pretty cool. So my curiosity, John, usually gets the best of me. I reached out to that organization. They told me what they offered, what they provided, what they were trying to develop in me as a leader. And then he told me the price point, and I was like, okay, everything's reasonable. Let me sign up and jump into it. And I will tell people that if they're either thinking about jumping into some kind of leadership program certification, or they're in their retirement career and thinking, hey, I want to leverage some of my speaking and instructor skills because I'm not with my current agency anymore, you have to spend money. It's what it is, folks. Law enforcement, government employees, I know we're not used to spending our own money on ourselves. We all know that. But the people that do are the people I have seen, especially having a speaking business now for 8 years, that take their life to the next level. They take their career to the next level. So folks, don't be cheap. Don't say, oh, I'm waiting for the next budget to come in, because you're not going to, you keep signing up for these trainings that you want to go to. And if you pay yourself, they're like $600, just go do it. Like at minimum, try to get the days off, but you have to spend on yourself. If you're cheap with your development, you're going to be cheap with your growth. I'm going to say it again. Yeah. If you're cheap with your development, you're going to be cheap with your growth. Do not settle and do not shortchange yourself because you're waiting for someone else or an organization to develop you, because it will never work for you.
Okay. Let's stop. See, this is the beauty of podcasts, especially with somebody that you know and your colleagues and have the same vision, right? Again, going back to, let's just say some CEOs in Florida, one in particular, doesn't want to spend money. So they have just a cavernous leadership gaping hole staring at them with the fumes still rising up from the crash, but they don't want to spend any money. So they might bring in one consultant, and the consultant comes and meets with the team, and they develop this plan, and then there's zero implementation. It just dies on the vine. So why would something like that happen? What, in your opinion?
It's the same reason that we do use of force reports after something that happens. It's accountability. You have to have and once again, this goes back to, and this is me speaking to both government entities and now corporate entities. Corporate entities don't mind spending money on coaching, because they know more than likely, and I don't want to disrespect any organizations or any law enforcement entities, but a lot of us are only trained on what's taught to us at our local agency. So we don't know what people do on the outside because we don't play well with others. John, you know that. You know, law enforcement, we're almost siloed. And working in the corporate world, they're like, they have speakers, they have associations, they just don't know that. So what I see is when people don't spend money even on themselves, they never learn what's really out there. And I guess I'm thinking about it now. One thing I would recommend to everybody, every person listening to your podcast, go, if you could get your agency to pay for it, do it. But if not, find something externally that's not law enforcement related at all. Find some kind of communications training, some leadership training, some skill, because you're going to see how the other side lives. Yeah. The other side being corporate.
Yeah. So to your point, law enforcement is siloed, even though we're not supposed to be. We're siloed in the industry as well. And you have to break the circuit to bring in fresh ideas, fresh horses. And the only way to do that is to look outside the box. We know what's in the box, right? We know about how things work in law enforcement, and a sergeant does this, a lieutenant does that, but the rest of the world does not operate the way we do. And to your point, when you leave law enforcement, when I left law enforcement, I went into the corporate world as well, and my eyes opened up. I was like, I didn't know this, to your point.
Yeah.
And that has positioned me in a better place when I left the corporate world, because now I have a much broader view of how things work and how they're facilitated. So, but hey, tell our listeners, so you started with Tallahassee Police, very young. You left, you went into the federal law enforcement system, and from there you were at the Bureau of Prisons. And then at some point, when did you say, I want to leave this law enforcement behind and venture out? And why did you feel that calling?
Oh, John, I still do both. Okay. That's what a lot of people don't know. I still have a federal law enforcement job.
I didn't know that.
Do both.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I have people in the federal prison system on all of my social media, and they always joke and say, where are you at, or do you still work with us? No, I just talked to them on the phone the day before. They're just trying to be funny because they're just they're trying to make that joke. But no, John, I hustle. And I tell anybody that if you're not preparing for your next level, then you're just selling yourself short. So even you, when you went to corporate, that learning curve could have been smoother if you would have already known what you were getting yourself into. So
100%.
Rather than jumping yeah, because you just, once again, you didn't know, and you, when we worked together, you were a hell of an officer. You were great, and you were good at what you did, But a lot of the communication skills and things that we learn in law enforcement, it's received well if you know how to change your verbiage.
Yeah.
But you don't know how to change your verbiage if you haven't had to do it.
Exactly. So that's one of the things that if somebody calls me now and they ask me about getting to the private sector, what I would say was they don't care if you wore 3 stars or 3 stripes. It doesn't matter to them. They don't see it that way. They go, hey, that guy was a cop. But so you have to transition and take what you learned in this realm, redirect it, relabel it, and then use that same thought process under new terms, right? And that's how you can develop yourself as a leader into the corporate world, because not everybody talks about vehicles and apprehensions and cop speak, you know what I mean? You can tell, like if I wrote a report, like, oh, a cop wrote that. Even a Facebook post, sometimes you're like, a cop wrote this Facebook post. So, but you're right. So there's a whole new skill set that one must learn. So, and then going back to where is Michael Laidler? Where were you the last few weeks? Like,
well, the month of November, oof, man, I did a lot. I'm going to work backwards because I know where it's more in the middle, but I know where I start. Like, one of the things we talk about, I know we're going to hit what the hat I have on. But vacation wise, because once again, as I said earlier, my hobby is traveling. So back in November throughout the month, I traveled to internationally for vacation specifically, traveled to Mexico City, Hong Kong, Vietnam, and Taiwan.
Wow.
In about a 2 to 3 week period. Earlier in the month, I had 2 speaking engagements, one being in, where was I? I was in 2 places. I was at least one place that I can think of. I was in Illinois speaking to their new chiefs orientation. But right after that, like I had a keynote on Thursday. That night, I actually traveled to Salem, Virginia. And what I did over the next 3 days was one of those situations that I highly recommend to anybody. I highly push to any first responder, anybody that wants another form of wellness. And what I did was I went on a hike with Frontline Freedom, which people, if they get a chance to see maybe one of the clips that are created by Dave Later, it's a nonprofit organization that deals with a venture strategy. And I hope if Mike Slocum listens to this, I hope I got it right. But what they do, they do hikes, they do backpacking, they do a lot of outdoor activities to address a different level of wellness. They are run by first responders. They know the first responder lingo. They know what fears, what anxiety, what setbacks we face, because that's what they have done themselves. And we had they partnered with the FBI National Academy. So that particular hike, outside of the people that were volunteering to host it, there was about 60 or so NA students that were in the session right at the time, which was session 296, and they joined. And over those 2 days of hiking, I want to say I hiked about 17 miles. The first one, both of them was on the Appalachian Trail. So if you don't know what that is, go look it up. I mean, John, I know you know, but for the viewers and stuff
for our
like
listeners,
that,
go ahead. And tell me the name of the organization again.
It's Frontline Freedom.
Frontline Freedom. I'm looking it up right now. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, and the website is actually pretty simple, folks. It's frontlinefreedom.org. They were able to get at least most of that name. So I don't know why they didn't do .com. I would have to ask Michael Slocum about that. But the first day was a 13-mile hike, which took about 5 hours. Which for hikers, that's pretty cool. And that's something that's probably normal. For a non-hiker like myself, it was challenging. But something cool I was able to do, which I had never done before, was on my own podcast, which is the LEO First podcast, I recorded multiple interviews, whether we were before we started the actual hike, during the hike, at certain stopping points of the hike, even after the hike, I recorded. And then the next day, we did another about a 2 to 3 mile hike, give or take, maybe 4 miles. And I did the same thing. And the feedback we had, like I said, that was my first time ever going to that, was amazing. It was one of those things that require you to disengage. And like I said, that's for me for hobbying. I like traveling because it forces me to disengage. Hiking because you're just trying to survive.
Yeah.
If you're trying to deal with a work issue, you're going to struggle. And a lot of times, most of your phones will not work up there. Like I have AT&T and I had no reception. A few people with Verizon and T-Mobile had a little bit, but my reception was pretty much gone for the first half of the day while I was up there. So once again, it forces you to focus on you. And that's a big part of resilience. It's a big part of leadership, because you can't lead others well if you're struggling to lead yourself. I know leaders, we're good at masking stuff, especially in law enforcement, because our whole career is to hide trauma, hide critical incidents, hide our personal problems. But that hike forces you to actually say, you know what? I have to survive this. And that was me. Like I said, before that, John, I think the most I've ever hiked was like 2 or 3 miles. And a lot of that hike for me was just fighting through it. Like, I'm not out of shape, but hiking's a different type of shape. It's
totally different.
Like swimming. Yeah. Like swimming. I don't swim. Like, I just don't like swimming. Like, but if I would ever start swimming, I know that's a whole different activity versus doing CrossFit or lifting weights or even playing basketball. It's just different. Yeah. Hiking, you have to be mentally ready, because while it can be physically challenging, it's more of, can you disconnect from the world for a few hours to enjoy yourself?
Yeah, it's almost so. Yeah, my son and I have done sections of the Appalachian Trail, and it's addicting. It's addicting because you are isolated, and you're at some point you're just looking at the step in front of you, because you're like, I cannot believe I have to keep going. So it's a mental game, and then at some point your body and your mind just kind of get into a rhythm, and you find yourself decompressing. You find yourself taking boxes out of your brain and going, hey, let's look in here, let's ruminate. Okay, I don't need that anymore, or I need to hang on to this. And it becomes an addiction. The trail did for me anyway, to the point that I think about it all the time. I want to finish it. I would love to do the whole 6 months at once, but it was very challenging. But the mental freedom it provided me, and being in touch with God, I don't know how you could be in the mountains and not feel His presence. It was just amazing, and it was a reminder that there's way more to life than law enforcement. So it was wonderful. And I did watch your posts, and I had the privilege of being an FBI grad. I went to session 273, which drew me even closer to what you're doing. So I was vested in you personally, the trail, and the NA. So I found it fascinating. So
yeah, a lot of people, before I even start, so I've been speaking now, and I know I didn't tell this part. So after I did the John Maxwell team, during that particular certification program, and I know it's part of their marketing style, they was like, hey, why don't you form a business? Now, we taught you how to do certain coaching strategies. We taught you how to speak a little bit. We've taught you how to facilitate a little bit. Why don't you take some of the tools we have given you and create a business? So in October of 2017, I actually opened Michael Laidler Unlimited, which was designed to talk about leadership and resilience. So during that time where I was living in Louisiana, most of my focus was, how do I get out and speak to any group I can about leadership? So I did that pretty heavily from that October of 2017 to about December of 2018, because in December of 2018, I moved here to Beaumont. So while I would love to say that I continued that push, I did not, at that time, only because the job I took here in Beaumont was over internal affairs. I don't want to say, John, you were internal affairs before, right?
Yeah.
You were. Yeah. So you know that grind. Yeah. yeah. But you know what I mean? Like, that's a grind all in itself.
Yeah. Well, so it's a different grind that nobody's going to understand unless they walked in your shoes, and you don't get Christmas cards.
Yeah. I was on Marlon Marachi's podcast. He's a retired LAPD officer, and he has something called, I want to say it's like the IA Guy podcast, which focuses on internal affairs. And that's something that we talked about. When you're in the role of internal affairs, people look at you like the boogeyman.
Oh, yeah.
But you're just like, I have something. Guys, I didn't create these complaints. I didn't create whatever you did that wasn't right. That's not me, but I have to investigate it. I have a due diligence, because I tell people, if you complain on another employee and we didn't look into it, how upset would you be? You would oh, they don't care. So in the role as internal affairs investigator, now you have to be that person. And you're right. If I would go to any event, even the organizational ones, people would look at me or not say anything. You know what I mean? Because I was that guy. Or even now, people say, well, you've been out of that role for 5 years, but we will always look at you as an internal affairs guy. I'm like, what? But they would say I was good to them, but they would still have that reservation just because I hold the role. So you're right. Unless you've actually officially been in an internal affairs role, whether it's a supervisor, an investigator, it's a whole other role in itself. Yeah. And like I said, most of the time I was just like, hey, let's figure out how to tell me the truth. Let's get through this. And if you did do something wrong, especially on video, let's just work through the process. Let's do what I like to call damage control. Like, I'll admit to what you did, and then let's figure out how to also put in your affidavit or your statement, like, why'd you do it? Because that's part of the process too. Like, a chief of police, a sheriff, a warden, if you're found guilty of something, that's fine. But they're still people. You can draw from that emotional side of them. If you say, well, I cursed this person out because I had an argument with my kid this morning, or I had an argument with my wife last night, and I just wasn't in the right mind. Because as people, we do have bad days. Like, I know, you know what I mean? Like what people struggle with, either that's never been in law enforcement or people that are in law enforcement. You're a person at the end of the day. You're just a person that's done additional training and got a job. But you're allowed to have bad days. Now, you have to come up with different strategies and tactics to overcome those bad days. But it makes sense that you will struggle at times. So for me, when I was in that internal affairs role, I was like, okay, how can I help this person out? How can I make it to where we can reasonably give an explanation of why you had that bonehead moment in your life? Like, what happened? Like, some things, obviously, it doesn't matter what's going on. Like if you do an excessive use of force, that's fatal or deadly, and it comes back to where you were completely wrong, you're going to deal with that. You're probably going to lose your job. You may even get criminal charges, but that doesn't mean that the people deciding what's going to happen to you next, they're not human. They're not AI. It's not like you go on a jury trial and there's 6 or 12 computers sitting there. Like, it's not like that. Right. So I always tell people, even internal affairs role that. So off that. So I did internal affairs, and then COVID hit. So for almost 2, maybe 3 years, my big business was kind of stagnant. So that's when I decided back in like 21, 22 that I was going to start speaking to more law enforcement. So that's what brings me here today in 2025, December of 25, is that my whole career has been a progression. It's been moments that I have learned and experienced, but like speaking, I would have never known I was good at speaking if I didn't go give myself external training. Like, I just didn't know I was good at that, because although I can communicate as a law enforcement officer, the speaking world is a whole other thing. And most people will tell you public speaking is a whole other level. And it's crazy, John. People struggle more with speaking to strangers than they deal with their own internal people. And you've experienced this, I know you've had.
Oh, yeah.
When you talk to external people, everybody loves you. Like, everybody's just happy to see you. Like, you don't realize, especially as law enforcement, like me speaking more in corporate now, they love hearing my stories. They love understanding how I dealt with like leadership under crisis, because they will never get that. Right. They will never know, because a lot of corporate speakers, and I know I'm not stepping out of line when I say this, they don't have real world experience. They don't have lived experiences that you have. People that, like, you go to a scene where, especially as a sergeant or captain or anybody in a leadership role, and now you have to deal with not just the problem, but delegation. A lot of them will never see that. So when we show up to these corporate events or any kind of even nonprofit or whatever education, when it's not law enforcement, they're so appreciative. Your internal training, people have probably seen you for 5 years speaking now. So those are the ones that are grimacing or like, we got to hear John talk again.
Yeah,
what is he going to say this time? Here we go again. Not understanding. So I tell people, especially law enforcement, if you've been an instructor internally, more than likely you can strive, or you can thrive externally. But they don't it's I don't know, but it's been good. So speaking to where I'm at now, it's allowed me to see a lot. It allows me to kind of get more into my own when it comes to public speaking. Like I said, 2015, I didn't think I was good at it, but through training and spending time with myself outside of work really helped out. So I do tell people, if you want to see that growth in yourself, you have to spend money. You have to. And time, like, you can't rely on your 40-hour work weeks to develop you to the next level. It's going to give you certain tools, but like I said, just externally speaking or speaking in corporate settings are just slightly different, not completely. You just have to know how to change your words and your verbiage to succeed.
And we'll be right back. SaferWatch and law enforcement. SaferWatch is a powerful tool that enhances public safety by improving communication between law enforcement and the community it serves. Through the SaferWatch platform, agencies can send real-time emergency and non-emergency alerts, keeping residents and visitors informed about critical incidents, safety advisories, and community updates. Additionally, SaferWatch allows the public to report crime tips, suspicious activities, and threats, providing law enforcement with valuable intelligence. SaferWatch tips have led to the prevention of school shootings, stopped sexual predators, caught wanted fugitives and burglary suspects, and has even prevented suicides. This easy-to-use two-way communication tool ensures faster response times and helps protect the community proactively. By empowering both citizens and law enforcement, SaferWatch fosters a safer, more connected community. For more information, visit SaferWatchApp.com or download the free SaferWatch app on iOS or Android. Now back to the show. It would be like Rocky Balboa just training Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, right, for a prize fight. And you're not going to do that. You're not going to succeed. You're going to be mediocre at best. So that's a great point. So we have to strive if we want to break out of the mediocrity as a leader, an informal or formal leader. We have to strive to do more. We have to break outside the mold, learn, spend some money, and look outside the law enforcement realm. It's a wonderful realm. It really is. It's a noble profession, but it's a sect, and the rest of the world doesn't operate there. And so to be successful in the rest of the world, you really have to learn the vernacular. It's like going to a foreign country, right, with your travels. You have to learn the customs of the corporate world, or when you get out of law enforcement like me, you realize there's really not a boogeyman behind every door like we were taught. There's no plus one anymore, and I don't have to look at everybody's hands while I'm standing in line at Panera. So, right?
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that, because whenever I meet someone that's corporate, or I meet I meet someone that doesn't have like the direct like line to law enforcement, like. And even now, like I'm not as active in the field, although I still have a law enforcement position, but I still find myself making sure the walls behind me, or I see people walk in and out. And a lot of times when I'm talking to somebody, like dinner, lunch, even coffee, I have to tell them early, like, hey, if you see me looking over your shoulder or you see me scanning, don't be offended. I'm listening to you, but based on my background, it's just in me. Like if I hear doors close, or if I see someone just walking by quickly, like if I see their shadow come up, I'm probably going to look. Like you can't, and that's fine. But going back to, you don't have to change yourself. You just have to know how to reword certain things. So I do want to throw this in there. This is something that, and to this day, I remember the moment it happened, because it happened when I was 19, and it was a great moment. I was doing the in-service training when you graduate from the academy and you do the in-service to kind of get you prepared for like the local like customs, or the local like strategies for like TPD. Yeah. Before I went into the FTO, and I can remember I was doing the driving training. I was in the driver's seat. I pulled up to the actual the little stop. I don't know if it was a stop sign, but it was something that I was stationary waiting for the other driver to go through. And I remember Clay Fallis, which everybody, if you're TPD, if you don't know Clay, he still does stuff to this day with teaching. Yeah. I remember him, and he didn't know me from the next person. He walked up, and I think it's just his usual routine of just being a conversational guy. He was like, hey, man, what are you studying? And I was like, I'm studying criminal justice, because, every cop, we want to struggle criminal justice because that's what we're taught we need the study to thrive in this industry. Yeah. And he was like, everybody has a criminal justice degree. It's like, you already have the job. What are you doing? And I was like, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. And he was like, well, why don't you go diversify yourself? I literally remember him saying, go make yourself different. Mind you, I don't even know if Clay has a degree. I just know that he said that to me. And I remember that day that I told myself, okay, how do I stand out in a crowded room? Everybody, education is going to have a criminal justice degree. Everybody's going to have maybe a psychology or sociology degree. So that was in the summer of 2005. Because I was still working on my degree, by January of 2006, I then switched my degree from criminal justice to business, because I was like, how do I stand out in a crowded room? And that was the one thing that a lot of people didn't have. And people kind of looked at me weird when I said, oh, I'm going from criminal justice to business. But when I told them, everybody I told it to, they're like, that actually makes sense. Like, how do you grow and prepare yourself? So from that point, I got a bachelor's degree in business. And then a few years later, I got an MBA, a master's in business, because I always wanted to stand out in a crowded room. But once again, that's going to investing in yourself. So when I go in certain rooms and people say, oh, what's your education? Or they know I have an MBA. It's like, it just creates that different level of the way they see you. Because, you look at resumes and everybody has criminal justice, but then you find that one person like, oh, business, or I don't know, some other random degrees people get, but it will set you apart. But it's, once again, it goes back to what we talked about earlier. If you're not spending money on your growth, you're not going to develop. It's just what it is.
Yeah, and then the different mindset is this too: is that like in boot camp or in the academy, or even sometimes in roll call and briefing, you're taught to be the gray man, right? Blend, don't volunteer for anything, stay with the herd, don't leave the herd, and that's kind of ingrained in us until you go, I want to do something different. And the second you go, I think I want to be an investigator, or I'm going to put in for sergeant. What happens? The herd looks at you and they're like, you're betraying us. But you're not. You want to better yourself. You're working on Maslow's hierarchy, and you're trying to get up to self-actualization and growth, but yet the herd can try to pull you back down. And I think some of the ways we were taught was not to stand out. But a real leader stands out. A real leader is the one that steps forward and says, I got it. Get behind me. So that's really, really important. I'm glad you said that, especially for our listeners to know that it's okay to go, I want to do more, I want to be more. You can get out of the herd mentality, right?
John, it's funny you say that, because when I started doing Toastmasters, I got ridiculed. People were making all types of fun of me doing it. Fast forward 10 years later, and they're like, hey, man, how'd you do all of that? Like, how are you making the amount of money you're making speaking? How are you going to this state? How are you speaking to that group? I'm like, because I wanted to develop myself where I didn't see that development there. Yeah. And I had to fight that herd mentality, because I mean, even to this day, I still invite people to Toastmasters meetings, because I still do them here and there. But especially back then, I was like, why don't you go to Toastmasters with me? Oh man, I don't know. But you tell me you want to be a better communicator, and how am I doing it? How am I able to go in front of a briefing of internal or external people and deliver a message? I tell people what I have done is nothing special. It's nothing like I create a cure for cancer. I didn't do all of that. All I did was take simple steps that is available to everybody, and I implemented them. I executed them, and I did it with discipline and consistency. I said, I give people all the time the strategy to where I'm at. And there's still a lot further than what I want to go. But people that are trying to get to where I'm at now, I'm like, it's very simple. You work on yourself, specifically with communication. You do things that are like Toastmasters, $120 a year. I mean, you just take little steps. You get education. You keep developing yourself in places that aren't as common. But John, I want to make sure that the listeners don't feel discouraged. If you're already doing some of these things internally, and you know what you have to do internally to get to an investigator or a sergeant, keep doing those, because that's your full-time job. Right. Make sure you don't get so far away from growing externally or growing for the future that you forget you have something. I had a warden tell me this years ago, and she was like, look for the future, but don't mess up your present. So some people get so so distracted on developing themselves, they forget they have a full-time job. So for me, I know what I have to do first each and every day. I have to work on my full-time law enforcement job. But in my free time, like when I have, or downtime from that, I know I have to go read. I have to go listen to podcasts. I know I have to develop content. I know I have to develop speaking strategies. I know I have to develop myself as a leader. Like, I know that. But for those that are listening, I'm not saying to go and lose focus on your everyday job. If you have a salary that's coming in full time, you need to focus on that. Like, you need to be good at that. But the other stuff will only make you better at that. So like, even for me, working in the prison system, what I have worked on over the last 8 years specifically, my first few years, they're like, oh yeah, we don't want none of that. And I'm like, you don't want free leadership training? Like, you don't want something? But I didn't let it discourage me. But over the last 2 to 3 years, I'm doing in-person trainings at different prisons. I'm doing virtual trainings because they see the traction. So I've essentially elevated myself to be better at my current role. So a lot of people don't get that part. A lot of people think that, well, what am I doing on the outside that's going to help me? Well, if you're one thing, like, not everything, like if you're cutting grass on the outside, that's probably not going to help you technically. It might help you with like budgeting and finance, but it's probably not going to help you necessarily as a better communicator. But you find things that can enhance your current career even now, because if your goal is to rise in the ranks, the whole point of me saying you need to be a better communicator is the higher you go as a leader in any organization, any sheriff's office, any PD, at anything, communication is what's going to always set you apart. It's going to just take you to that next level that everybody else is going to be confused about, because you'll know how to deliver your vision. You'll know how to explain your message a lot better than that person that may even have a better resume than you. You can actually talk it out while they're just saying, oh, I have these 18 certifications. Yeah, they probably do, but can you lead a team?
Right.
And that doesn't happen unless you can communicate that.
So apply what we've talked about this morning and what you just discussed. How would you, in your role outside of law enforcement, apply that to up-and-coming leaders in law enforcement? So, the paths you've been down, the travels you've been on, your personal journey, and what we just talked about. What would you say to maybe a current leader or somebody that just got into it or wants to get into leadership? How would they grow and continue to thrive?
I have two keynotes. I have two signature messages right now. One's called Fueling Resilience, and the other one's First Responder Leadership. The purpose of fueling resilience is, if you ever want to lead anybody better, you have to lead yourself. So for me, I tell leaders at all levels, no matter what industry you're in, you have to build yourself up every day. How do you do that practically? Once again, there's a lot of free things we can do. Podcasts are free to listen to. Your library, if you don't want to spend money on an audiobook, or if you don't want to go on Amazon, you have a library and they will give you free books. I mean, they will literally let you check out a book and read it. So those are two free things you can do. Obviously, social media is a good thing. That's something that I don't know if I would be on it as much if I didn't have a business, but it really helps relay your message. It helps you see other messages. Like I try not to get down the path of the wrong shorts or reels, but I realize in my algorithm, I have a lot of leadership stuff, a lot of inspirational stuff. And it's cool because I see some of these folks that are ahead of me in the communication world. And even them, I realize are regular people, but I also realize that they've mastered certain skills. So I see these skill sets and I'm like, okay, how do I make the beginning of my keynote better? Or how do I make anything, just a class better? And I use those to my advantage. So a lot of times when I see people getting into a role, the first thing I tell them is, I ask them, what are you doing to develop yourself? Like, what are you doing to build yourself up? And one thing I've done, John, that's kind of been my secret sauce, which it's crazy because I never thought it would be. Over the last 2 to 3 years, I do counseling monthly. I'm counseled by an actual trained professional. And people are like, oh, what's wrong with him? Nothing. Sometimes we go and just talk about real estate, or we talk about something random. But when I have things come up, it's for me, and I've had the same counselor for the last 2 to 3 years. She's a 70-year-old white woman, never been in law enforcement, but she's a person that talks about life. So I'm able to get things off to her without the worry of having any kind of negative feedback, which counselors and psychologists don't really do that, but it's something I do completely outside of work that no one knows about, because at the same time, we all have a certain level of confidentiality that we like to pursue. And for me, that's my way of doing it. So I tell leaders, if you're not into counseling, if you're not in some form of therapy, it works.
Yeah.
It's literally something that will transform your life, because we all have personal stuff going on. We all have work stuff going on, especially the thing about being in a leadership role, the higher you go, the more problems you deal with from others. But once again, if you're not fighting your own battles, if you're not fighting your own setbacks, how can you effectively help somebody get through it? If you're struggling to even come to work because you're still thinking what happened 3 years ago in your life, people see that. People realize when you're not being as authentic or you're not focused. And I tell leadership groups all the time, especially law enforcement, if you're one of the people, and you probably are in your role, you're probably someone that says, hey, go to EAP, Employee Assistance Program, or go see peer support. You can easily tell somebody that. But if you haven't done it, are you a hypocrite? And that's where I tell people to really dial into their style as a person, because you can't lead without knowing what's going on with you. Now, can you fix all your stress and all your issues overnight? No. But you can start working on them, and you can start looking at the root causes of why you responded in a certain way. And it's prevented me from making not a lot, but a few bad decisions over the last few years of either responding to somebody in a certain way or thinking about something in the wrong way. So I tell people the $35 I spend a month on my copay is probably some of the best $35 I spend. So y'all can't tell me that you can't afford it. You can't do that. Oh, I have to spend another $35. Yeah, but Depends on how your diet is. You probably buy energy drinks every day. And
That's
how
right.
much is that? How much does that equal in a month? Or how you probably go do something else. That's probably not as good for you. But trust me, folks, every leader I tell, no matter what industry they're in, is work on yourself. And one of the best ways when you're not looking at training is go get a counselor.
Yeah. Well said. I mean, Colin Powell, one of his principles was command is lonely, right? Whether you're a frontline supervisor, middle management, or the chief executive, it's lonely. And the higher you go, you can't vent up, and you should not vent down. And there's times that you can't even vent horizontally. So you get in a bubble. And I'm with you. My counselors have both been on this podcast. Shelley and Bonnie, some of the first guests we had on here, because it's that important. And I agree with you. You have to have a safe space to vent or to get a little guidance that's not in the law enforcement world, right? Because if not, we just stay in this bubble. We stay in this bubble. We stay in this bubble. So that goes back to your point about developing yourself, is to go to leadership classes outside of law enforcement, communication classes outside of law enforcement. That's a great point. So what else would you say to maybe somebody that's in leadership? You talk about resiliency. Let's say that you have somebody that's been in leadership a long time, and they're probably getting to the point of burnout, or they're just a little bit shy past burnout, and they're on the road to being toxic. What tools can they bring themselves back with?
For me, it starts with, and I have a framework called Failure Fuels Growth. So I have a 5-letter acronym. You know how it is in law enforcement. We build our whole careers off of acronyms. So
Yep.
I couldn't be the person not doing that. Like I had to, because you say acronym, that everybody gets excited. Like TPD. Like you don't hear everybody say, "Oh, I'm going to the Tallahassee Police Department," but you say TPD, and it's a very nice term to have. So for me, my fuels framework starts with face the moment, understand the impact, equip yourself, lead with intention, and sustain the shift. So the most important part of this framework is the first letter, and it should be. It's called face the moment. And as leaders, as you rise higher, there's going to be battles that you put on the back burner, whether it's personal or professional, that you have to address. You have to at least acknowledge that it was a problem. And as you do that, you're going to be able to realize why you made other decisions. So while you're at burnout, while you're getting to burnout, or you're just be toxic already, there's always a story behind it. John, there's like I said, we were both internal affairs guys. There's always 100%, there's always a story behind a decision that was made.
Yeah.
So as leaders, as you're dealing with this, especially the higher you go, you're going to face burnout. It's just life. Like what any leader deals with, especially in law enforcement, it's hard to measure. I just know at the end of the day that if you're not dealing with your own personal battles or professional battles, you cannot grow. So when I talk about this framework, I'm like, okay, and I actually do an activity, which I learned at FSA. I can't remember who the speaker was, but he spoke before me, and he was a corporate guy. He had wrote a book with Simon Sinek. I think he wrote Find Your Why with him or Start Your Why. He was a co-author to one of those. Okay. But he used this thing called a Mentimeter. And I know I'm giving away this because all your viewers that are especially speakers or instructors are going to use this. But Mentimeter, I think I pay $150 a year for it. And it is probably one of the best tools I use for interactivity. And I learned it from the speaker at FSA because what it does is that it takes anonymous, like you put a question and it gives you anonymous response. And, people want to say what's going on, but they don't want their name associated with it. So I do this Mentimeter activity early on and I ask one question. What's one internal battle you've been avoiding? And from there, that gives every person in the audience that decides to participate, which I want to say 80 to 90% actually participate. So if I'm in a room of 75, which I was back in November, I had like 65 people participate. I've done it in rooms of 200 to 300, and I would have like 200 people out of 300 or 150 out of 200 actually participate. And I use that activity to start the rest of the framework because before we can deal with anything else, before we can understand how something's impacted you, before we can figure out what tools we need to equip ourselves with, before we can continue to lead with intention or sustain a mindset shift, we have to realize where it started. And facing the moment and facing those battles, just assigning some word to it. Actually, Matthew Lieberman from UCLA actually did a study on labeling. He did it back in like 2007, 2008. and based on his studies, is when you label something that's happened to you, that's the first way for you to overcome it, because you're not giving it power. You're not giving it like energy, so to speak, but you're telling your mindset that, okay, I've been through something tough, or I've been through something that's critical to me. And for that, even if you don't look at the rest of it, you at least put in there. Like for me, the story I always start off with is what happened to my mother when I was in high school. During that time, she attempted to commit suicide. And what I didn't realize is that it created this unreasonable response to fear. Like it created something that I was like, you know what? When I deal with critical incidents that are tough or trauma, I'm just going to ignore it, because I'm like, this is what everybody deals with. So for me, I tell that story because I tell people there's a lot of things that's happened to us either in our adolescence or early, even in our careers, however you want to put it, and we hide it. So when other things come up, we've created this unnecessary armor to not deal with it. And that's actually bad for your mind. Like, I'm not telling you that just because you give it a name, you're going to overcome it, or you have to give it all your time and attention. But as a leader, there's things that you have dealt with 100%. Like, it's life. If you're, technically you could be 6 or 7 years old and you dealt with some things in your life, probably like that was tough to you. Yeah. And I tell people what happens is when you do address these things, it doesn't matter how it compares to somebody else, because everybody deals with things differently, and it's just life. So for me, whenever I deal with leaders, and I'm like, hey, one thing that you could take away is facing that moment, dealing with that battle, at least addressing it, letting you know that something's happened to you, because when you don't, it just lingers. It just keeps like sitting on the back burner. Like, it just sits there. So if you want something that's tactical, which this is the Tactical Podcast, find a battle that you've dealt with, or think about it, and just put a label to it, whatever you want to put. For me, what happened with my mom when I was in high school, I just labeled it fear. And that was something that started the whole process. Even when I wrote my book, Greatness Beyond the Badge, I had that moment buried so much that I didn't even talk about it in the book. And the book is on self-awareness, John. But it was something that I didn't think was, because to me, at the time, especially when I wrote the book, I had the mindset of everything that's happened to me started when I put that uniform on at 19. Yeah. Now, a lot of things happen, but you know, John, that's kind of where because it was hidden away, that issue or other issues growing up.
Yeah, so it starts when you come into this world. Yeah.
Yeah. But John, I didn't know that, because once again, part of learning, part of developing is going through your own learning path. Like anybody, Colin Powell, for example, he didn't just become Colin Powell just out the gate. Like he went through a lot of stuff, but you only see what's in his book. Like, I think I have his book back here, or I know I have it upstairs, but a lot of people think that you only need to address what's going on right now. You do at some point, but you also have to figure out what's happened to you in the past. And don't live there. Don't live in the past, but understand why it's impacting you today. So for me, the first thing, especially tactically, would be look at your life, figure out what's kept you up at night at any point, and just label it.
I think that's smart. That's one of the things I learned just recently. So what you're talking about is like self-discovery. I thought most of my issues also stem from that job, and then when I stopped and I went back and looked, I'm like, okay, I know where this is from. This is long before law enforcement, and I hid it. I put on the mask all these years. But you're right. When I labeled it, in my mind, I labeled it. I gave it a name and a face. So when I felt this feeling, I'm like, that's fear. That's anxiety. I know what you look like. I'm not scared of you anymore, and I know how to deal with you now. So I love that. So, Michael, our time is, I can't believe it. I blinked and our time's up. What's something you would say on the way out? If somebody were to go, hey, tell me about Michael Laidler, what would you want them to know?
That to where I'm at now was a journey. It was something that came through, be straightforward, spending money on myself. Like,
investing in
couldn't yourself. Investing in yourself. I can't be where I'm at right now, especially as a speaker, as a father, as a son, as a brother, law enforcement officer. I couldn't get to this level of success, because I've been successful. And people measure success how they want. I know in my mind what I've done, I've been successful. I took a lot of time to discover myself, and it's been a journey. It wasn't nothing that happened overnight. I'm 40 years old right now, and my years that have just come. Like I have gray hair from a lot of other things that's happened already. Yeah. But that journey is something that I hope to help people get to. I can't do it for them. I cannot every day implement what you do, but I can give you tools. And I tell people right now, I'm not really a coach because people ask me to coach. I'm like, that's not really my style, but I'll get you excited about starting the framework. I'll get you excited about how to develop yourself. And then I'll probably say, hey, go to somebody else for coaching. So, because it's not really mine. Like I said, it's not my forte. I love being on the stages, just giving people energy. I love that. Like that's something that took me 10 years to develop and learn. So it all starts with developing myself each and every day.
Okay. Well, I can feel your frequency. We're not in the same room together, but I feel your frequency, and it is positive. It is gregarious, and that comes off when I've seen you speak as well. And that's really important too, that people feel your vibration, right? And that's also different than a lot of law enforcement officers who are walking around with a lot of baggage. So I appreciate you sharing that too, Michael. So if somebody wanted to contact you or find out more about what you do, the services you offer, or your book, how could they do that?
Luckily, over the last few years, I've learned about business marketing and development. So I am on pretty much every main social media platform, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. And they can just find me at Michael Laidler, Laidler. And I have worked the system enough that if you just Google my name, you will find a lot of different things. It's SEOs. You know, John, you don't know that though. So I have literally probably 8 years of content that I have working on. So if you type my name into your Google or to your Safari or whatever internet browser you use, you type Michael Laidler, you will find multiple ways to find me. But then I also have my website, which has been probably the most important thing I've developed as a business owner. And that's michaelalaidler.com. If you don't put the A in it, Alexander.
Okay. michaelalaidler.com. A has to be in it.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I know people are like, why don't you just get Michael Laidler? Guys, I've already tried. I went to GoDaddy and I try to find that person that has Michael Laidler. They never responded. So unless you know that person has the website, which if you do, please let me know. Feel free. Also, and I've learned this, you could call or text me, 850-339-0409. I've had that number, obviously, since I lived in Tallahassee. I think I got that number in 2005. So if you do want to reach out directly and you don't want to do the social media or look on the internet, you can call and text me at that time or at that number.
Thank you for listening to The Tactical Pause, the official podcast of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. FDSA proudly serves over 25,000 deputy sheriffs across the state with legal benefits, vital training, and financial assistance in times of need. You can listen to previous episodes at fldeputisheriffs.org or wherever you get your podcasts. If you've enjoyed the show, please leave us a review and encourage your friends, coworkers, and those in the law enforcement community to listen as well. To learn more about the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association and how we serve those who serve, visit our website at fldeputisheriffs.org.